It's the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Mike McIntyre. Thank you so much for joining us. Social media reports were filled with unverified speculation about immigration and customs enforcement actions in Northeast Ohio over the last week. This as protests over ICE in Minnesota ramped up, and the president threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to quell it. Protests continue in local communities, too, and the Cleveland Division of Police issued a statement saying officers would never ask for immigration status and are not tasked with enforcing general federal immigration laws. The Cleveland Clinic wants to ramp up its emergency services at main campus to be certified as a Level 1 trauma center by 2028, joining Metro Health and University Hospitals, which already offer Level 1 trauma care in Cleveland. Level 1 means they handle the most severe injuries. Metro Health wants the clinic to reconsider, saying 3 Level 1 trauma centers in Cleveland would be unsustainable. First Energy wants regulators to weaken standards, giving it more leeway to have more and longer power outages. Meanwhile, a Cleveland public power transformer explosion on the city's west side provided a fireworks show, cut power to local residents, and damaged homes and appliances. And not only does Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb want to close Burke Lakefront Airport to make way for new development, he wants it done fast, by the end of his new 4-year term. He'll need Cleveland City Council and the feds on board for that. And joining me to discuss all of those and other stories from this week, IdeaStream's Deputy Editor for News, Glenn Forbes, and reporter Abigail Botar. Hey, guys.
Good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning. Good to have both of you here. And in Columbus, a woman who will leave her private jet in the hangar and take her chauffeur-driven Bentley to Guardians games should Burke close, Karen Kassler. Hey, Karen.
Oh, yeah, that's my life. Yeah, absolutely.
You had the Bentley take you to the State House today, didn't you?
Oh, of course. Well,
Yes.
nobody wants to be driving, so.
Only in style. All right. We appreciate your interaction with this show as well. And maybe Karen will share pictures of her Bentley if you send us an email.
It's a great visual, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Having
Yeah.
her drop off right
I
at
like
Progressive
it.
Field.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think it sounds good to me. Let's
She's
go.
in the back with her microphone doing all her work. Yeah. So anyway, if you want to join us, you can send us an email, and you can do that by sending an email to soi@ideastream.org. We want your questions, your interaction, your comments throughout the program. All right, let's get ready to roundtable. President Donald Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to quell ongoing anti-ICE demonstrations in Minnesota in the wake of the shooting death of Renee Good by a U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement agent. Protests have erupted nationwide after Good's death, and there have been many in Northeast Ohio communities, including Cleveland, Akron, and Kent. This week, social media has been filled locally with unverified reports of ICE activities in Cleveland. Noted immigration attorney Margaret Wong said there were reports of ICE agents in the city and offered advice about people's rights should ICE agents come to their door. Cleveland police took the extraordinary step on Wednesday to issue a statement saying it's not its job to enforce general federal immigration law. So, Glenn, what else did the Cleveland police statement say?
Yeah, they said it's important to note Cleveland officers will never ask about an individual's immigration status. Essentially, what they're saying is we're here to protect public safety. We're here to go after, violent crime suspects, and things of that nature. And it's interesting when you look at that at the backdrop of several years of people on council and Mayor Justin Bibb, in fact, saying we're 300 officers short, under budget. So what they're saying is we've got to take care of ourselves first. We got to take care of violent crime first. We're not responsible, and we're not responsible for enforcing general immigration law was the crux of the statement.
Sounds like it could be kind of a dangerous statement, though, given the fact that the federal government has said you got to get on board, and if you aren't, then you're a sanctuary city. We're going to defund you. We know that our mayor heads up the Democratic Mayors Association and has said some things about the Trump administration. So I just wonder if Cleveland worries about where it's positioning itself when you have an administration that clearly will take action if it thinks you're not on board with their policies.
Yeah, just observing. It's a statement that kind of tries to walk the line, It's not thumbing its nose. It's not as maybe as charged as some of the rhetoric coming out of Minnesota between the governor and the mayor of Minneapolis. But it is saying, it's not saying we're not going to cooperate. What it's saying is it's not our responsibility, and we have other priorities. And so I do think they're kind of trying to walk that line. This is interesting, Mike. I think all of this started with a Facebook post from former state senator Nina Turner on Sunday night. And it says, I've seen unconfirmed reports of ICE agents knocking on doors on the west side. She's talking about Cleveland today in the Denison Avenue area. It's important to know your rights. it seems like that's what kind of kicked off the firestorm. An IdeaStream reporter, Gabriel Kramer, called Margaret Wong and Associates, who came out with a video with one of their attorneys talking about the rights and things like that. And they said, that was kind of the impetus for that Facebook post was kind of the impetus for what they were saying. And they told Gabriel that they get calls once in a while about ICE knocking on people's doors, but not Wednesday that they knew of. So it's something that they get some reports of it here and there.
Right.
But this was all kind of hearsay and speculation, but it shows, where the attention is and how much, obviously, of a hot button issue this is currently.
Yeah, and obviously that's on top of people's minds. You're seeing it in the national news. Not only were those reports about on the West Side, but also Abigail in Cleveland Heights. The Cleveland Heights page was filled with those kinds of reports. There were folks that were saying that there's a church where these ICE agents were staging, and so the pastor of the church even had to issue a statement.
Yeah, he said that they did not grant any permission to federal law enforcement to use the parking lot, and that it would be considered trespassing. And he went a step further and said that the church is a sacred space that belongs to God, and that ICE's unauthorized use of this space is a desecration of their holy ground and an affront to God's justice. And I feel like this is like a lesser situation that's been happening. I've been seeing videos of people trying to say this is, I don't grant you permission. This is private property.
Right.
You can't be on. I don't know. I saw a video where it worked once. So I don't know how much federal law enforcement listens to the private property, but they said they were not contacted, did not grant permission.
And I think it's important to note, Glenn, that we did do some research on this, and I've seen other media do it as well. We don't have confirmed reports of, first of all, ICE in general, although they have been around forever, regardless of what's going on in Minnesota. But we don't have any, first of all, reports individually, but that there's a wave here as there was in Minnesota. There's 3,000 federal authorities in Minnesota, or at least on their way at the moment.
Yeah, certainly not seeing anything of that kind of presence. And again, there's really haven't been any confirmed sightings, just some reporting here and there that, and I think people, again, when it's top of mind, people can see a uniformed officer and think, well, maybe that's ICE, or see people getting out of a van and they're dressed.
Yeah, but maybe they are, because
it could be.
They're doing enforcement actions. The question is, is it widespread?
Right, and it doesn't seem like that's the case right now, certainly not with what we've seen in Columbus, closer by, or in Minneapolis. So, yeah, a lot of hearsay, but again, I should point out that not only Margaret Wong and Associates, but IdeaStream's Gabriel Kramer did a story on what are your rights, and we put that back up on our website and shared it out again because people are talking about it, and obviously some people are very concerned.
Karen, U.S. Senator John Husted issued a statement regarding ICE this week. He basically told Ohioans to, stand back and let them do their jobs.
Yeah, he was talking to reporters on a virtual press call about some other things, and of course he was asked about ICE. He said protesters are free to speak out against ICE operations and to help people who are being detained, but he said do not interject yourself into the process of law enforcement. He also added that he doesn't want to see people intervene in an ICE operation because then, in his words, you get tragedies like we saw in Minneapolis. In Columbus, we've had Operation Buckeye that happened last month. About 280 people were arrested in a 3-day period, and people who are watching the operation say ICE is still here, but they have tapered off their main operation that happened middle of last month.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on that story and appreciate your interaction with the show. By the way, you can send an email to soi@ideastream.org. Michael is our resident jokester who sends us emails, and he says the rumors of ICE agents in Cleveland this week probably came from residents looking out their window and yelling, "There's ICE everywhere." Okay, Mike, that's a wah-wah, really. Let's move on. First Energy is asking the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio to lower reliability standards for power outages, basically allowing for more outages that last longer before it's determined that standards weren't met. A first hearing is scheduled for next month. Glenn, First Energy says its data backs up this request. What's it seeking from the PUCO?
Well, they're looking for Cleveland Electric Illuminating, which is part of First Energy. They're a subsidiary. They have not been able to meet their standards, their outage standards for the last 2 years. The state looks at average power outages. How long do they last? And how many times does an average customer lose power in a year? So Cleveland Electric Illuminating is looking for basically another 15 minutes per outage, from 135 minutes to 150. Other companies are asking for another 3 minutes or another 12 minutes. But basically, they're looking at an average, and I think people hear this and they say, why why do you want to extend, the standard? Why do you want to give the utilities more time to put our power back on? We'd like our power back on quicker, not more slowly.
They're just saying, hey, we don't want to be out of compliance, so give us a little more leeway here. But
Right.
and people are saying, wait a minute, I want to fix like in a minute. And it's funny, you're talking about these minutes, but when I know people in Lakewood, they had outages, they were hours and days.
Right. And, the Ohio Consumers Council, there's a spokesman, John Blackwood, he says, if you look at it as an average, if you take all of these power customers and if you took to look at it as an average, it could be an entire day without power. And on an average basis, that only accounts to a couple minutes for some of these companies, if you think about it in a
If you put
larger
every hour
scale.
in a
Right.
time period in it.
The other problem with this is people are paying more in utility rates, and we're supposed to get infrastructure improvements and things like that. And First Energy is saying, well, we haven't been able to realize the benefits from those infrastructure improvements yet. So you can understand why power consumers are saying, wait a minute, we're paying more. You said that a lot of this was for infrastructure improvements. Now you're saying that we can't realize these infrastructure improvements yet, and the reason why you need more time is because the equipment is outdated.
Right.
So it's kind of a cyclical thing that consumers are saying, well, wait a minute, how can this be?
Yeah, and Abigail, I'm thinking about Lakewood because I mentioned them. There was a big hearing there, and residents saying we want action. And then to get the response being, hey, we'd like to get a little more time to have even longer outages must be infuriating to them. Not just Lakewood, Cleveland, Barberton, they've all endured big outages in the last year.
Yeah, they've been very, very loud and vocal about this. And, the city's released statement saying that this move would increase the harm their residents suffer. I mean, think about critical power for critical equipment like CPAPs and oxygen and important medical equipment, having to miss work and school, exposure to extreme heat and cold, having their food spoil. I was at my friend's house in Shaker on New Year's Day, and their power went out. It got quite chilly very fast.
I bet, yeah.
And to have to contend with that, I mean, I think her power had been out a couple days before for a couple of days. So they're saying, as Glenn was saying, I mean, if rates are going up, people are paying more, and they're getting less good of a service. And I mean, these cities in particular and their residents are just really tired of it and are really wanting some action to be taken.
Let's talk about why these outages are happening. The utility, First Energy, says one of them is increased rainfall and trees essentially being toppled. We had one on my street, by the way, completely uprooted, fell down, hit power lines. One of our neighbors had a big repair as a result of that. But they're saying these big trees are a big problem.
Yeah, and they're saying that specifically it's trees that are outside of their trimming zone that are falling. So they're saying the increased rainfall is causing that to happen more often, the aging lines and equipment. Another thing people are frustrated with is that they're not clear on where the updates that Glenn was talking about are happening. So it's like very ambiguous, like when they can expect things to get better.
One thing that's interesting to me, though, is that the utility is saying it's the trees, and Lakewood and Cleveland are saying, no, it's not.
Right.
It's your line failures, your equipment failures, human error by the company. If not, don't blame it on the trees.
Yeah, Lakewood said that there was 33 of the power outages came from line failures, equipment failures, or human error, and only 12 were due to trees the company maintains. So, they're kind of saying that doesn't add up. That excuse doesn't add up for us.
All right, let's talk about another utility in the news this week, Glenn. A number of households were without power for more than a day after a massive transformer explosion in Cleveland. I saw it on social media. It was a fireworks show.
Yeah.
And at least one of our employees here is home today waiting for an appliance repair person because his microwave started smoking and the dishwasher doesn't work after this transformer explosion. He lives nearby. Let's talk about that. What happened with Cleveland Public Power?
Yeah, this was quite a visual event, and somewhat ironically happened during a Cleveland City Council meeting. So I was hoping they were going to talk a little bit about that, but I don't think word got to them during that meeting. This was, like I said, quite a show. Cleveland Public Power says it was an electrical fault that damaged homes and meters. This was a substation that pretty much blew up, like you said. Not blew up, but as
did.
as you mentioned that the fireworks show that occurred there. So no injuries were reported, but Cleveland Fire was talking about some strange reports. The chief there said it's highly unusual to hear about power lines glowing red after the incident. It affected about 1,000 Cleveland Public Power customers. And residents, you mentioned utility issues or appliance issues and things like that. One resident told Channel 5 that his wife was holding their son and shielded him from debris and sparks flying all over the place.
Yeah, the electrical box in the meter in the house, apparently.
Right. This is a terrifying incident for a lot of these homeowners down in the west side of Cleveland.
We have an email here from Kelly who says, especially after this week's transformer explosion and subsequent power outages, we should be holding these electric companies to higher standards, not lower. Are they going to start refunding customers for the time that they're in the dark? Good questions. We'll be following up on that. I also would like to know, are they going to refund people or make them whole if their appliances blew up because of something that happened there? So we'll be continuing to report on that for sure. One other utility issue, Karen, First Energy is still trying to maneuver away from the bribery scandal over House Bill 6. The state trial in that case involving a couple of executives from First Energy is fast approaching.
Yeah, House Bill 6 is, of course, the nuclear power plant bailout bill that First Energy had wanted. And this, as you said, is the state trial for former executives Chuck Jones and Michael Dowling. Former Public Utilities Commission Chair Sam Randazzo was also set for trial, but he died by suicide in 2024. And so Jones and Dowling are accused of paying $4.3 million to Randazzo before he became the PUCO chair, and they have pleaded not guilty.
And the witness list looks like a who's who of state government.
Yeah, and I mean, I should mention, too, that First Energy, the company, has struck a plea deal on federal charges, settled with the PUCO for $275 million earlier this year. But then, yeah, you look at the witness list for Jones and Dowling. I mean, you're talking about Governor Mike DeWine, Senator John Husted are both on that witness list. DeWine and Husted's former Chief of Staff Michael Hall, former Republican, longtime lawmaker Bill Seitz. One person who's not on the list that's notable is DeWine's former legislative liaison Dan McCarthy, not on the list. And I should mention that these people have all pleaded not guilty. And just because you're on a witness list doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's just you could potentially be called.
And let me just say this, because it sounds like it might be a little bit confusing. When you say these people have pleaded not guilty, you're talking about the people that are going to stand trial, Chuck Jones, Michael Dowling. There's no reason to plead for these names on the witness list. They're just witnesses. They have not been charged with any. I just want to make sure that we weren't
exactly.
getting confused there. Yeah.
Yeah, because and you also have, former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder and former Ohio Republican Party Chair Matt Borges, who went to federal court. And Jones and Dowling also still face federal charges in this case. But Householder and Borges have asked the U.S. Supreme Court to look at their case since, again, they were convicted on federal charges. Borges is out of prison, I believe, in a halfway house, and Larry Householder is still serving a 20-year sentence.
Okay. The Cleveland Clinic announced yesterday that it intends to earn certification as a Level 1 trauma center at its main campus by 2028, its second Level 1 trauma center in the region after Akron General. Cleveland Clinic main campus leader, Dr. Scott Steele, said he sees a need for this top tier of trauma care within the clinic's own system. And that's what's key here, because Cleveland already has 2 Level 1 trauma centers operated by University Hospitals and Metro Health, which called for the clinic, Metro Health specifically, called for the clinic to reconsider and said the city isn't big enough to sustain 3 such facilities. Abigail, Metro Health is concerned there's going to be too many trauma centers, and it really is one of Metro Health's bread and butter as a safety net hospital. That's always been the place. In 2016, University Hospitals joined them, but forever, Metro Health was known as the Level 1 trauma center in Cleveland.
Yeah, and they said that they looked at other cities similar size to Cleveland and that they don't have 3 Level 1 trauma centers, so they really couldn't see a future in which Cleveland could sustain that. And they said that having 3 would harm patient outcomes and increase costs for the whole community.
How is a Level 1 different from a Level 2? Because the clinic has a number of Level 2 centers and it has emergency rooms. What does Level 1 do that gets it this certification?
It has more specialized surgeons, physicians, and critical care specialists, so they get the worst of the worst, most severe or complex emergencies. They're able to handle better than a Level 2.
It's interesting because I've talked to some people and they're really scratching their heads over why the clinic would do this, because level one trauma centers don't actually make money. No. So the question is, why would you do it? Maybe it's an issue of the clinic just saying we want in-house to have the top tier of everything, and perhaps that's one of the reasons. We'll continue to follow that story and how it might affect the publicly funded, in some ways, Safety Net Hospital, Metro Health.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. An effort to repeal a new state law that changes the recreational marijuana statute passed by voters and bans intoxicating hemp products was hip-checked by Attorney General Dave Yost this week. Ohioans for Cannabis Choice wants to block Senate Bill 56 from going into effect while it looks to put an issue before voters to repeal it. Yost was very critical of the summary language on their ballot petition, right, Karen?
Yeah, and it's not really unusual for the Attorney General to reject a petition at first submission. But like you said, they're trying to stop this law from taking effect in March. And so to try to do that, they've got to get their petition right and get all the signatures into Yoast, get it approved so that the law can be stopped. It's just part of the process. And so they can still make the November ballot, but it's stopping the law from taking effect. This is a coalition of hemp retailers and cannabis retailers who want to change the provisions want to stop Senate Bill 56, and which made some big changes to that industry, the hemp industry. It basically bans most intoxicating hemp and THC and CBD beverages, but it also changes the law that voters approved on marijuana in 2023.
Yeah, it changes that in some ways. It could criminalize. You have to keep gummies in their packaging. If they're not, then it could be a crime. There's a number of other things that they're concerned about.
Yeah, it caps the THC content in adult use marijuana flower at 35% and extracts at 70%, if that's something that means something to you. It also, I don't mean you, Mike, I mean you in general. It increases penalties for exceeding the home grow limit of 6 plants per person, 12 plants per household, adds penalties for smoking or vaping marijuana in a vehicle, and it also changes where the marijuana tax money goes, because when voters approved it in 2023, it was designed to go to a social equity and jobs program. The bill completely gets rid of that. So Yost said basically there were 6 areas of concern he had, and he said there's time to resubmit it here, but some of these things were significantly misstated, and he said one thing that was in the petition was even false.
All right, while I dig into this bag of Doritos, I'm going to move to another topic for you. Karen, Equal Rights Ohio is now at the start of a petition drive to put not one but 2 proposed constitutional amendments on the ballot. What would those, and they have the same kind of requirements, they need the 400,000 plus signatures in 44 of the 88 counties. What are they asking voters to approve?
Well, they had wanted it to be one issue, and it's basically an anti-discrimination issue, and it's got a very long list of categories of people who could not be discriminated against, but also it would change the law that's in Ohio law and in the Constitution and protect same-sex marriage. Because right now in the law and in the Constitution, it says that marriage in Ohio is between one man and one woman. But then this was broken up into 2 separate issues here, and so they have 2 separate petitions that they're working on. My State House News Bureau colleague Joe Ingles is actually checking in with them today, so we should have an update later on.
All right, terrific. And some feedback from Pat from East Cleveland, who said if the Cleveland Clinic Foundation had wanted a level 1 trauma center, they shouldn't have closed the one they had in East Cleveland. That's Pat's point of view. I'd like to have your thoughts as well. Send email to soi@ideastream.org. Right now, though, we're going to take a quick break. And we come back, how changes are coming to the program. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the anti-hunger program. This is the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable. I'm Mike McIntyre, and we will be right back. And you are back with the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Mike McIntyre with Glenn Forbes and Abigail Botar from IdeaStream. And Ohio Public Television and Radio State House News Bureau Chief Karen Kassler joins us from Columbus. A quick reminder before we get to the roundtable, back to that discussion. You can take our IdeaStream news quiz at ideastream.org/quiz. Really a fun way to start your Friday. So feel free to get on that. Let me know how you did. You can send email to soi@ideastream.org. Changes are coming to 2 federal safety net programs, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, or what was once referred to as food stamps, and Medicaid, health insurance for people with low incomes. The changes are part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed last July. And Abigail, you looked at how specifically Summit County is dealing with this and recipients. What are the changes coming to each program? And then we can talk a little bit about how these counties are are going to deal with it.
Sure. So the big change is work requirements. The law removed work requirement exemptions for a number of groups that use both of the programs. For SNAP, that means recipients ages 55 to 64, parents of children ages 14 to 18, veterans, people experiencing homelessness, and kids aging out of the foster care system. Those are all groups that were previously exempt from meeting work requirements for SNAP. They will now have to start meeting those requirements this year. For Medicaid, it's recipients ages 19 to 64 who are covered under the Affordable Care Act Medicaid expansion that will have to meet work requirements. That expansion covers like a bunch of people with household income under a certain level. It's pretty all encompassing. So that will be a lot of people. And Summit County has been holding, I think they've held 2 so far, sort of public forums for they come and talk about the changes. The Department of Job and Family Services. And then they also had, at the event I went to earlier this week in Barberton, they had tabling from basically every nonprofit and government agency in Summit County to, I think, hopefully fill in some of the gaps. Like, if you think you're not going to qualify for SNAP anymore, you can get some resources from, say, the food bank. But, you know, there's concern, I think, that people will not realize that this is happening, even though the state will be sending out, like, both written information about the new requirements, and I think they have to either call or text or email. There has to be 2 forms of communication, I believe. Just concerned that people won't know this is happening, and then all of a sudden the rug will kind of get pulled out from underneath them.
When you mention work requirements, it means somebody has to do either public service or have some sort of a job for 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month.
Yeah.
The question is, if they get paid for that, do they then get out of the income eligibility?
It's a big problem. And in Summit County, there's actually a new program that they're piloting that is sort of, it's like called the Bridge Program or something similar to that, where if that happens to you, say you're on SNAP, you get a job, but you're not making quite enough to be not face food insecurity, and that maybe would lead people to not want a job so that they can, you know, be food secure again. They have this program where they have to meet certain requirements with work, or it helps them connect them to more stable work. And then it kind of bridges them, that gives them some extra money to pay for food. I think it's like a year or 18 months long. And the goal is to help them better ease off of SNAP and into being fully self-sufficient without just kind of a jarring, oh, you got a job, now you don't have any help getting food anymore. So luckily in Summit County, the county really emphasized that program that people can take advantage of. But I don't believe it's in any other counties. Well, we should look into that and do a story on that again. But that is something available to Summit County residents.
You've just assigned yourself a story.
Yes, I did.
The Medicaid changes, in addition to the work requirements, right now, every year, you have to recertify and say, here's how much money I'm making, and here are the receipts, basically. They're saying that that's going to be stepped up. It's not going to be every year.
Yeah, it's going to be twice a year. And I think that's just since the requirement is going to be kind of lifted to a higher standard, that they want to be checking in on that more frequently.
Okay. Ohio's Republican lawmakers are backing bills to make it easier to pursue fraud against child care providers that receive government money. Recall Governor Mike DeWine last week said Ohio has guardrails and won't see the kind of fraud being investigated in Minnesota that involves Somali-run centers. That sparked a wave of accusations against Somali child care providers in Ohio that the governor said were unfounded. And Karen, 2 Dayton area Republicans are proposing some reforms, but they don't necessarily share the alarm seen on social media.
Yeah, in fact, Phil Plummer and Tom Young, when they had their press conference, were standing with the director of the Department of Children and Youth, Kara Wente, who is part of the DeWine administration. And they talked about how this idea of there's massive fraud in Somali-run daycares in Columbus is gaslighting. And they mentioned that, yes, the state does need to make sure that its anti-fraud provisions are beefed up, and that's what their bill does. But they said that they actually praised the state, saying that the state has done a good job of staying ahead of fraud, and that there really isn't this widespread fraud that certainly was happening in Minnesota, apparently.
Which is interesting, because when you first hear they're proposing laws after all of these allegations that are made, then you think maybe they are thinking these allegations are true. But this is literally just some tweaks. They're saying the system is working fine.
Right. They said that. But then the next day we have Josh Williams, who is locked in a primary to run against Marcy Kaptur, the longtime Democratic Congresswoman from Toledo. He talked about his bill, which he does with DJ Swearingen from Sandusky. And that bill would actually require cameras and video for any publicly funded childcare. They would have to install those, and they would have to make sure that the Department of Children and Youth had access to them, those videos, in real time, so that attendance checks can be done and spot inspections can be done. It really increases the power of the Attorney General to investigate, and it stops payments quickly if there's suspected fraud. So they say their bill goes further than the other bill, but we've got two dueling bills here on a subject that we've been told there isn't widespread fraud on, and the state has anti-fraud measures in place, but certainly there are those who don't think it's enough.
All right. A lot of people are doing sports gambling nowadays, and whenever you have sports gambling, you're going to have sports fixing. The latest sports betting scandal involves players for the State University of New York in Buffalo, SUNY Buffalo, and it has connections to Ohio. At least two basketball games being investigated for point shaving to fix bets involve Ohio opponents, Kent State University and Ohio University. Glenn, let's talk about what the allegations are. Point shaving, basically, I flubbed a layup. I purposely missed a three-pointer. That's the only way I'd miss one, purposely. And somehow that will affect the point spread and help bettors who are on your side.
Right. That's what prosecutors are saying. And it's important to note before I start talking about this, the allegations are not against any player from Kent State University or Ohio University.
Right. They were the opponents.
Right. This has to do with, their opponents from the University of Buffalo. And basically they're saying, what is being alleged is there was this large amount of money, an unusually large amount of money placed on these first half point spreads. And in one of these games, Kent State went on a 12-0 run to end the first half. So if you're just think about it, you're just betting on the first half score essentially. And what prosecutors are saying is they had a couple players from Buffalo who, like you said, were missing layups, missing dunks, essentially ensuring that the minus 8.5 point spread for Kent State for their opponent was hit. So it's interesting because this is not the first point shaving scandal. It has happened before, but it certainly seems to be happening with more frequency because of the widespread nature of sports gambling and in all these different states.
I can say in all seriousness, I have never missed a dunk.
Me neither.
Never made one either. Karen, Governor DeWine has talked about this. These are prop bets. What's the score going to be at the half, or who's going to score this many points and that many points? And we've seen this issue with the Cleveland Guardians pitchers as well, prop bets. What does the governor say about this and about the need for integrity?
Yeah, he's bothered by this. He ordered prop bets and on NCAA games to not happen in Ohio, and he said he's very concerned about this. He's been working with the Major League Baseball and NFL, National Football League officials to try to crack down on some of this prop betting. And there was an effort to limit prop bets at $200. He said prop bets at $100 or more were really the problem here. But this is something that he's been concerned about for a long time.
And he wants that expanded nationwide. It shouldn't just
Absolutely.
be an Ohio thing.
And that's why he said he's gone to the MLB and NFL and really and NBA, because there's a scandal going on with the NBA as well. The whole idea is that this is happening nationwide, and he's very concerned about it. You've had threats that have gone out not only to college players, but also, which prompted Ohio's ban on these prop bets for college players, but then professional players say, the Ravens kicker who missed the field goal, he said he's gotten death threats. His family's gotten death threats.
So there's some allegation that he purposely missed that. I guess people.
No.
The suspicion though would be there. You would think,
sure.
if that was a close point spread or something, people would no longer give you credit for just not succeeding.
Well, and it's interesting because, these sports gambling operators are in all the stadiums. They're near all the stadiums. So naturally, I think people, they think about sports gambling, but also you think about the other things involved in sports gambling, allegedly.
This is a huge advertising, the fact that, as Karen said, they're in all the stadiums, they're on all the commercials. This has been a huge pot of new money. And so there's this balancing act, but it's interesting because the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, basically said the other states need to get on board and eliminate threats to integrity. The remaining states should ban these prop bets for colleges. I think it's interesting because if tongue in cheek, if I had advice for bettors, I'd say take the under, because it's much easier to point shave or to purposely miss a kick or whatever. Not saying that that's happening, although the allegations are in point shaving. But it's much easier to do it on that side. But, we had Tim Donaghy, the NBA official, who was accused of actually going the other way and calling more fouls and technical fouls so that the over would hit. So it's not new. I just feel like we're hearing about it more, and again, because it's more widespread. But it's an interesting issue because these leagues have made so much new money from these gambling companies. The gambling companies are making money hand over fist. And they've got to kind of figure out a way to get all this. But I will say this, too, about the threats. Enforce current law. There's laws against, if you threaten a kicker or if you threaten any player,
right.
You should be found and prosecuted and all that stuff.
And as you said, it's not new, but it's got to be a lot more widespread.
Sure.
Back in the day, you had to call Bert and get your bet in.
Yeah.
And now you look at your phone and
It's
you can
all in
make
your pocket.
100 bets.
You've got a casino right in your pocket.
Yeah. All right, we've heard a lot about the Browns' planned move to a new enclosed stadium in Brook Park from the Cleveland perspective, and a lot about funding for the development itself. What about the traffic, infrastructure, and parking, and the impact on Brook Park? This week, the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, NOACA, convened a public discussion about how the stadium could impact traffic. The good news, they don't appear to believe it'll be a traffic nightmare. So, Glenn, the top line from NOACA was basically, impact may not be so bad, mainly because we were built for a bigger population, our transportation infrastructure.
Yeah, when you think about the interstates and you think about the highways already surrounding the airport area and just the highway system in general here in Northeast Ohio, Grace Gallucci, the NOACA executive director, says, we're built to absorb a lot of this. Expect some delays, of course, but not anything crazy. It's, like the normal game day delays that we see in downtown Cleveland for Browns, Guardians, or Cavs.
Tell that to somebody who has a flight
Yeah.
at Hopkins and is trying to get by that transportation traffic. I mean, there are definitely going to be snarls, but their point is this is not something that's going to be disastrous.
I was surprised to see that, again, based on the modeling, NOACA expects virtually no impact on travel travel time to Cleveland Hopkins Airport. But the other important thing is that, that street infrastructure closer to the stadium, they are going to have to make some improvements there. They're talking about right now there's too many one-way streets, there's too many stop signs. So they're going to have to put in improvements, pedestrian bridges, things like that. That price tag's about $64 million. So they estimate. So some improvements will have to be made. They'll have to take out some of those impediments and things of that nature. But basically their message was, it won't be that bad.
And the kind of improvements you're talking about are also necessary because there's 22,000 parking spaces in this private development, but there's might be more vehicles, and so you need to get people there if they're parking off-site. So pedestrian bridges and other wayfarers.
This whole plan by Haslam Sports Group, the ownership of the Browns, depends on a large volume of people coming to enjoy all kinds of events, not just Browns games, but restaurants, retail, team Hall of Fame, things like that. Yeah, the hotels. They're counting on that traffic, so you need to make room for it.
Karen, we mentioned this last week, but the legal challenges on the constitutionality of using the unclaimed funds, the state's unclaimed funds, to fund a part of this, which the state proposes $600 million. There's been a challenge to that. It's delayed the money. A lot of people don't think the challenge is going to be successful, but it can be successful in essentially dragging out the clock.
Yeah, and it seems to already be doing that because you've got former Attorney General Mark Dan and former state lawmaker Jeffrey Crossman who are suing over this. They are suing in federal and state court. The transfer was supposed to start on January 1st, but it has not moved forward, and so they're fighting it basically on two fronts, saying it's unconstitutional for the state to take money it's holding for other people and just use it for this purpose. But the state says they have the authority to do this.
Okay. Let's talk about Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb and what he's recently done, which is to put a timeline to his effort to close Burke Lakefront Airport, opening the land to prime lakefront development. He said it's a top priority for his second term, which began just this month, and he wants it to close by the end of that term, which is the end of 2029. He needs support from the city council, which has a lot of questions, and the federal government as FAA rules govern the airport. And Glenn, the debate over whether or not to close Burke is age old in Cleveland, but it's a new tone for the mayor. He came in, unlike Frank Jackson, and said, yep, let's get rid of this thing. Let's work on it. Now it seems like the urgency is being stepped up.
Yeah, that's the difference, right? The buy-in, political will, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot more momentum to this because of that. And you mentioned the Federal Aviation Administration. they're saying the difference between getting this waiver or not getting this waiver could be about 10 years. It might be to the end of the 2030s if they don't get the waiver. But yeah, so they're hoping, they've got buy-in, obviously, from the administration. They're hoping for buy-in from the federal agencies. What they don't quite have buy-in yet is from council. And Charles Slife, who heads the council's transportation committee, I heard him talk about this. He said, I'm not for it. I'm not against it. I'd like to be informed, right? I'd like to be part of the process. Council's definitely, has some say in this. And so it's not that I'm for or against anything. I just need something, tangible, I guess. I need tangible plans in front of me, and council needs to be involved is their message.
Well, good news. We are working at this very moment on putting together a community tour conversation, which means we'll be off campus, hopefully at the airport or somewhere nearby, where we'll have the mayor involved in the conversation, Charles Slife, and others as well. We invite you to that. I'll let you know as soon as we have it pinned down. But it could be in February, more likely in March, but we're going to have that conversation. We want the public there to ask questions. We'll have a microphone there as well. So stay tuned on the community tour that will be hosted by Stephanie Haney. And stay tuned to this program, because right now we're going to take a real quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a whole lot of other stories. And we're going to do it fast, because we've got about 9 minutes left and about 75 more stories. We'll do as best we can. But the Canton Hall of Fame Village is getting some financing that might save its water park plan. It's the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable. I'm Mike McIntyre. We'll be right back.
At 9:48, you're tuned to the Sound of Ideas right here on your NPR station. This is IdeaStream Public Media, streaming at ideastream.org.
Whether you're enjoying your morning coffee, taking an afternoon drive, or preparing dinner, WKSU is always by your side. And you are the bridge that keeps it going. Your generosity can transform everyday listening into something bigger: trustworthy journalism, engaging conversations, and a service your community counts on. If WKSU is part of your day, make that connection official. Become a sustaining member now at ideastream.org/donate, and thanks.
Welcome back to the Sound of Ideas Reporters Roundtable from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Mike McIntyre, along with Abigail Botar, Glenn Forbes, and Karen Kassler. The Canton Hall of Fame Village has secured financing that could jumpstart the stalled construction of a massive indoor water park. The 144,000-foot Game Day Bay that fronts the village property was started in 2022, but has been sitting unfinished since 2024. Some began to despair that the Hall of Fame Village would become a boondoggle. Could this be a 70 million reasons to think it may succeed? Abigail, let's talk about the unfinished water park. It was viewed as an eyesore by some. This injection of money appears to be what's needed to get it done?
I guess so. So they got the money from an Atlanta-based real estate investment group called Peachtree Group. But I think Canton residents and people that go down that stretch of 77 are hopeful that they can wrap it up. I mean, I think it's been close to 2 years that it's just kind of been sitting in the same state. So
the city's got a lot tied up in this as well, and really wants this to be a destination. If the water park is finished, there are other things that are still planned. Yeah,
they want to do a luxury hotel also at the site, but construction hasn't begun on that either. I bet I can say that Canton residents are hopeful they'd have all the money for that before they started construction.
Okay. The new Cuyahoga County Jail complex in Garfield Heights is estimated to cost about $900 million, and the county is now mulling a $20 million add-on for a geothermal heating and cooling system that wouldn't necessarily save it money, but would reduce its carbon footprint. Glenn, let's talk about why the interest in geothermal, and $20 million is not chump change.
It's not chump change. The total project is going to be close to $1 billion is the estimate. So it is a somewhat small percentage of that, but you think about $20 million, and that's a fair amount of money. As you mentioned, I think the interesting thing about this is they're not talking about saving money with this system of heat pumps. They circulate the fluid through. I mean, it's
underground.
That stuff is pretty much over my head, but there is buy-in.
Under your feet, actually.
Thanks.
Okay,
Mike.
go ahead.
Appreciate it. Remember when you said we should do this quick and efficiently?
Go ahead. Sorry.
But some on council are certainly buy into the idea that, hey, if this is going to help the environment, it's worth it. They may not see savings on it, though, for another 20 years or so. There's another big hearing on this at the end of the month on January 27th, and construction could begin as early as the fall, next fall.
And we will be covering that as well. All this week, IdeaStream Public Media and our partners at the Ohio Newsroom have been bringing you stories about the volunteer firefighter crisis across the state. Abigail and Abby Marshall from IdeaStream, along with Kendall Crawford of the Ohio Newsroom, have shed light on the lack of training, fewer new recruits, and money woes for volunteer departments, which cover 70% of Ohio. You'll find all the stories on our website at Sound the Alarm. You can just Google IdeaStream and Sound the Alarm, which I did last night, and the homepage will pop that thing right up as the first one. We've got web and radio stories, photos, graphics, all of that. Abigail, the project's been a year in the making. Let's just real quickly say why it is we looked at volunteer firefighters in Ohio.
Absolutely. This came from the East Palestine train derailment and was the brainchild of our former editor, Stephanie Chekalinsky. She really got stuck on the fact that a volunteer firefighter was the first to pull up to the scene of this disastrous derailment, toxic chemicals. So we started to do some digging and found that this is something that people at the state level have been, and certainly volunteer firefighters have been really concerned about for decades. But little has been done to help these departments. So that's kind of where we started, and we investigated all of the problems. And today my story on solutions dropped, so you can see the whole series now, and there won't be any cliffhangers.
Really important work. 70% of the state is covered by volunteer departments, at least in some way. You might live in a community where your tax dollars pay for a professional full-time department, but imagine those where someone is coming from their job and gets to the station and then gets in the truck and then gets there, and what kind of response times there are. It really covers all of that. So I encourage you to check it out at ideastream.org. All right. Moving on, the students who ran WCSB Radio at Cleveland State University and a group of supporters known as Friends of XCSB, the post-CSU name of the station, it's announced plans, by the way, for a streaming comeback. They filed suit this week against the university, its president, and its trustees over the transfer of the signal to IdeaStream for its Jazz Neo format. The suit alleges the First Amendment rights of the students were violated and said President Laura Bloomberg worked to silence student voices because they had been critical of the school while on the air. Glenn, that's the first I've heard of that. It had been in the past, why did you do this and why is IdeaStream taking over the signal? But now they're saying there's a reason for it. It's because we were saying critical things of Laura Bloomberg, and she was looking to silence us.
Yeah, that is something new that came out of this, and they're seeking the reversal of the deal. IdeaStream is not named in the suit. Their executive team did not have a comment on it, although there is some reporting out there that because of the nature of some of these non-disclosure agreements, will IdeaStream be pulled into it? That remains to be seen. But yeah, they're looking essentially to have that deal reversed. There's some issue over the fact that it was a flash cut, which is like, an immediate change in format, which is pretty common in commercial radio, but this is, student-run radio and public radio. So there's a little bit of a difference there, but that's essentially what the lawsuit is saying at this point.
And I do want to note the decision to enter into the agreement with CSU was made by IdeaStream's executive management. Our newsroom is independent and has not taken direction from the company in our coverage or in conversations like we're having here. We covered this story, and we'll discuss that when it comes up here on the Sound of Ideas, and we'll continue to assign reporters to cover the story as well. All right. Layla Edwards is going to be representing Cleveland in the Winter Olympic Games. 21-year-old born and raised in Cleveland Heights has become one to watch in women's hockey. Real quickly, Abigail, tell us about Layla's journey to the Olympic Winter Games in Milano Cortina.
Well, she's already made history as the first Black woman to play for the women's U.S. national team, which absolutely shocked me. But she started ice skating at 3, made the switch to hockey at 5. I'm really excited to see her play. I love the Olympics, my favorite time of the year. So I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, the Olympics are terrific. Hey, I want to note today we celebrate the life of a man who brought oases to Cleveland's food deserts. Bert Salzman, proprietor of Dave's Supermarkets. He was 88 years old. Other stores were closing while Dave's was expanding. Salzman, whose grandfather and father before him ran the grocery business, was CEO of Dave's, that's his dad's name, for 30 years before transitioning management to his 2 sons. He'll be remembered not only as a grocer, but as a giver. Salzman was generous in his philanthropy and showed genuine care for the people of Cleveland. The company now has 16 stores, including Lucky's Markets, in and around Cleveland, Akron, and Columbus. And I just wanted to say he was a great guy. I've met him and opened stores in places where they really needed them. All right. Okay, I was joking last year about how the mild winters could be attributed to me because I bought a snowblower, which went unused for 2 years. I'm a West Sider. There was never more than a couple inches suitable for a shovel. Well, I'll never tempt fate again because I had to run that sucker before and after work yesterday, twice. We had a pretty nice snowstorm yesterday. Did you guys enjoy that?
I had to miss my dentist appointment, and I'm actually really upset.
Oh, no.
I'm from
was
Menor.
so
This,
bad.
this is like a dusting for me.
Well,
you know?
you live
But
on the
you're
west
right.
side
Now
now.
I'm a West Sider, and it's like, whoa, what is all this stuff?
Well, it's like crazy. I was driving to Lake County,
Yeah.
where my dentist is still, unfortunately. The second I hit Cuyahoga County from Summit, it was like a snowstorm. Like, I don't know how Lake Effect knows the county line,
Yes.
but like the difference between Summit and Cuyahoga was crazy.
It knows. Well, I'll tell you what, you don't know, sometimes you don't know where the snow is going to hit, generally the snow belt, but you will know where the snow plows are now because some plows, better than others, were handling the snow yesterday. ODOT plows, they're visible on the Waze wayfinding app now. So when you look at your Waze, the plow icon will appear and you'll know, okay, that's where it is. Part of the reason for this, Glenn, is not just because we're busybodies and want to know, but we got to stay away from these plows. There have been a ton of accidents with ODOT plows throughout this season, and ODOT's hoping this is one way that would inform you to stay away.
Yeah, don't crowd the plow is the phrase. And here's the other interesting thing about this. You're not going to win in a battle with a snowplow, right? Like, I mean, what kind of personal vehicle would you have to have? So
Yeah.
there are a lot of good reasons to stay away from the plow.
All right. Well, that will wrap up our show for today.